friends? We are back at I Am Developer Live. I'm your host, Nick Taylor, and today I'm hanging with Josh Goldberg again. Josh, how you doing today?
I'm great. I forgot to mention ahead of time. I've got an unfortunately few remaining bag of chocolates with me, so I'm in a great mood.
Oh, okay, that's
How are
good.
you
That's
doing?
good. All right, I'm doing pretty good. It's had a good pairing session with my coworker Matt Kane today. I'm working on Remix, which is another web framework
Ooh.
recently acquired by Shopify. Actually, I'm wrapping up some work on having support for edge functions in Netlify, so you can deploy to the edge with Remix. So yeah, pretty happy about that. Aside from that, it happens to me every year, but like as I get close to the end of the year, my body just starts to feel tired. Part of it I think is the time change, but like I don't know. I was just feeling it like mid last week and like yesterday. I work out in the morning, so I'm a little wide awake right now, so that's good. But anyways, yeah. So I'm good. I'm good. You were on the stream a little while ago. I'm gonna drop before we get started. I'll drop a link to places people can find you. For folks that might not know you or who maybe didn't catch that last stream, maybe just give kind of like a who is Josh and what are you up to?
The man, the myth, the programmer. Hello.
Yeah.
I I'm Josh. I firmly believe that product teams should schedule nothing for December because my body also gets tired this month, and I think we should just do fun stuff. But I am a full-time independent open source developer, which means I don't have a job. I don't work for a company. I'm not affiliated. I work solely on open source projects that benefit shared developer tools. Most notably, I work on TypeScript ESLint, which is the tooling that lets you run ESLint on TypeScript code. Also,
Okay.
prettier on TypeScript. I also do a few random other projects on the side. That's me.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. So yeah, I dropped a bunch of links to you, including your GitHub sponsors page. If that's something that folks are inclined to do, definitely. Josh is doing a lot of great work. Also, there's been a big move to Mastodon, including myself. So I've also dropped Josh's Mastodon if you're on there too. And yeah, I'll drop a couple other things. I'm dropping a ton of links here, but we had a really great conversation last time. I think it's like month and a half ago, and I'm gonna drop a link to the recording of that. It's just a podcast episode. Oops, I dropped the link to your book instead, but check out his book as well.
Oops.
But yeah, we had a great conversation about TypeScript, ESLint, and your book. I highly encourage you all to grab a copy. I have a copy right here. It's a great read.
Woo.
Um, I'll just reiterate what I said on the last stream about the book is even though I'm dropping everything here, even though I've been doing TypeScript for a long time, I bought the book because I knew I would learn something and I did, so, and I think I just, I know we're not talking so much about the book today, but I just really like your approach to teaching the concepts. And I love that there's these modules at the end where you just kind of do some exercises to kind of solidify what you learned in that particular chapter. So yeah, hat tip to you. Yeah,
Thank you.
so we're talking about this stuff again today, but I think you had to cut things short last time because you had an appointment. So but still a great conversation. I'm talking too much here. But we're going to dig in a little more today into like ESLint, TypeScript ESLint, and ASTs. So I guess before we kind of get into all that, for ASTs, abstract syntax trees, could you maybe kind of give like a high level of what that is, just in case some folks might not be aware of what it is? And what kind of things actually use ASTs?
Sure. ASTs sound more intimidating to some people than they really are. An AST, or as you said, abstract syntax tree, is a representation of what's in your code. It's like a JSON or JavaScript or other language way of describing the contents of a code block or file or snippet.
Okay.
And almost every tool that works with programs, whether it's a compiler, something that takes your code and turns it into machine code that can be run, or a linter, which looks at your code without running it and yells at you about it, uses ASTs to reason about your code, to understand what it does and whether it's doing the right things. So they're really important, and tools like TypeScript, ESLint, Prettier, they all use ASTs on the inside.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so like if we talk about them high level, so like for example, Prettier. So most people that have been doing web development are, even if you're still kind of new, I think Prettier's pretty common these days. So you'll see it formats your code, and so basically what's happening there is it's grabbing the representation of that code, which is the abstract syntax tree, and then they're literally rewriting that source file based on how they want to, but it's the same code always, because they can obviously they have the full code. I mean, they could actually, in Prettier it's just formatting it, but if we were using something like ESLint or TypeScript ESLint, it could actually even change some of the code as well, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
The beautiful thing about Prettier, this is me nerding out now, is that it takes your code, whatever it was originally, turns it into an abstract syntax tree, meaning it's just a representation of what's in it that doesn't care quite as much about comments or spaces or whatever, or rather the way they're positioned, and then prints it out using its settings. So no matter what your code looked like originally, it'll have a reliable output with Prettier, which is real fast, which I think is just a cool way of formatting.
Yeah, no, it's great. I love having things just taking care of me. This is why, this is why I like Prettier. This is why I like ESLint, TypeScript ESLint. It's like, I come from an era, which I imagine you did too, where during code reviews, it used to be like, oh, can you, this is hard to read. Can you add 2 more tabs to this? I don't like the way you did this. Can you, not that optional chaining existed at the time, but can you use optional chaining here or something? And now with Prettier, there is some configuration, but it's pretty opinionated, and honestly, even when I don't like the way it looks sometimes, at the end of the day, I really don't care. I know it's consistent, and it will always be, whatever it's set to. So, and the same thing with the linting rules. It's like, unless I really strongly disagree with my team about some rule, even if I'm not a fan of some of them, I'm fine with it in general, because it's just gonna correct things if it can, or it's gonna let me know, hey, you can't do that. Or so I think it's
Strongly
really
agree.
great, especially, we talked about this a bit last time too, but I think from a maintenance perspective of a code base, these things are huge, because just you can block people on the CI/CD pipeline and say, hey, you didn't run Prettier, you didn't, this lint rule is failing, and some people might argue like, hey, that's a little harsh, but I've worked on large projects where I was the only person, like at Dev2, I was the only front end at one point. And so like having these things in place was super important for me to make my life like manageable as well. So anyways.
Nice. Agree. Yeah. I remember those conversations. I've been on teams where people don't want to use Prettier because they really care about the spacing and formatting. They want to have complete control, which is nice, but I don't think nearly as important as consistency, and especially not having to do it yourself, not having to
Yeah.
yell about it, not having to think about it, to manually format to match the existing stuff. Get out of here.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
for sure. Okay, so let's talk a bit about ESLint. So the ESLint project itself, what is that exactly? Like for folks that might not be super familiar with it, it's a set of rules, but like I guess not how the project started, but I guess it's pretty well known these days. But it ships with, I believe, like a bunch of recommended rules, but there's also like obviously people can create their own rules and stuff. Or
Yeah, you are correct on all those things. ESLint, which is a project I'm not an actual maintainer on, just an occasional.
oh, you broke up for a second.
Oh no,
Oh,
are
you're
we
back.
good?
You're back.
There's
Okay.
always something when I stream. There's always one thing that just goes a little wrong. I cleared my whole afternoon for the stream because I didn't want to cut you off again. Yeah, ESLint provides a few things. You're absolutely right. It provides a general command line / thing that can be used in Node, such as by your editor, that allows people to define rules that look at your AST, use your code, and generates warnings or errors or whatnot with suggested fixes. It also provides a bunch of rules that you can use, ones that are applicable to basically all JavaScript projects for the most part. And it
Okay.
provides a set of configurations you can use that enable a bunch of those rules with recommended settings. So like
Cool.
what a lot of projects do, and what I personally recommend for almost all projects, is at the very least in your ESLint config, extend from the ESLint recommended preset configuration. Because there's just a lot of really good rules, and the ESLint team puts a lot of thought into what goes into that list.
Yeah, no, for sure. And yeah, I remember just speaking from when I worked at Dev 2, I think we not throwing shade on any lint rules, but I found personally I found the Airbnb rules a little too rigid for what I was doing. So
Oh yeah.
so you know, obviously some people love them. I ended up moving the Dev 2 code base to just the ESLint recommended, and we used preact there, so there was also a set of preact ESLint rules. So kind of went with those just to kind of keep it simple and standard. But there's a whole set of, like, obviously, like, teams create their own rules. Airbnb, which is obviously a large company, they ship their own available to everybody and stuff. But yeah, I think as long as, if you have it at a minimum, I think the recommended, you're probably in good shape already.
For sure.
And this brings us to kind of a good segue, is like, so we have rules, maybe we're using the recommended, but I'm like, okay, I'm using TypeScript, so we have TypeScript ESLint, which are rules built on top of ESLint. What's different between the two projects? Like, obviously I know one's for TypeScript, so like what differentiates it in terms of linting?
Sure. Well, for starters, I get to maintain TypeScript ESLint, one of the maintainers, and I'm not for ESLint, so obviously I like the latter. The TypeScript ESLint project is a set of things that build on top of ESLint, but it's not its own linter. So I think I heard you almost say TSLint earlier in the stream. Maybe.
Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah.
I meant to say TypeScript ESLint. Sorry.
Yeah. I do the same thing. There was an old project that used to be the same thing as ESLint, but for TypeScript specifically, called TSLint, which is deprecated. If you're using it, stop, please. It's been deprecated since like 2019. But TypeScript ESLint just builds on top of ESLint. It adds a parser that works for TypeScript code, because ESLint and other JavaScript by default tools don't know TypeScript without configuration. And it adds a lot of rules that are specific to TypeScript code, like whether you should use a type or an interface as a stylistic preference. So then we also provide our own list of really good rules and recommended configs for using those rules, and APIs that let you do really powerful stuff that you can't in ESLint. Most notably, with TypeScript ESLint, you can use TypeScript's type checker for your rules. So you can know what type something is from the AST and your project, which is not actually possible in ESLint without something like TypeScript.
Okay, gotcha. And with TypeScript ESLint, because I haven't really ever looked deep into like the rules I'm actually using, does TypeScript ESLint is still able to run, like, say if I wanted to base my stuff off the recommended ESLint rules, can you do that? Or, and then the TypeScript ESLint enhances it, and I imagine it's just the TypeScript parser can still handle the regular ESLint rules as well. Is that how it works? Or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. We recommend people use the recommended ESLint config and then also use ours. We disable a few of the recommended ESLint rules because they do check that TypeScript actually already does a little more powerfully. But we generally don't intersect with them or interfere. I will note, though, there are some built-in ESLint rules that don't know about TypeScript stuff. Like, for example, you might have the built-in ESLint no one use variables thing, which doesn't understand like type imports and other TypeScript specific things. So we have some extension rule replace the ESLint native one, which is confusing to many and kind of annoying, but we haven't figured out a better way to do things.
Okay. I guess that's similar to, like, for folks that have ever had to configure Prettier in ESLint. Prettier has a plugin for ESLint, which, as far as I know, it strips all the formatting rules from the ESLint rules that are there. Is right? That's how it works, I think.
Yes. There are two ways of doing it. The one that you just described is what I recommend. Use ESLint config prettier, which just disables all formatting rules in ESLint. because linters like ESLint are not as good at formatting as formatters like Prettier. It's just structurally they're slower and they have weird edge cases that are hard to get. There's also a separately ESLint plugin Prettier, which instead runs Prettier as an ESLint rule, which I find really confusing because then people don't know like what's a complaint from ESLint versus Prettier, and it's already slower. So
yeah.
I don't recommend that.
Okay, gotcha. Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Okay, that's good. That's kind of set the stage for me in terms of like just getting an understanding of how all the pieces fit together. So I'm gonna drop a link to the AST Explorer. If folks have never seen this before, it's a really useful tool. Like even if you haven't actually built anything programming wise in terms of ASTs, it's still it's just a really cool tool to visualize it. And I'm gonna switch us over to pairing view here. Just one sec. AST Explorer. Cool. Let's go over to pairing. So yeah, so I just have AST Explorer open here, and I guess maybe we like this is the default example they show here. Maybe we could go. Does it make sense to go right to a TypeScript one? Just maybe we could kind of break down kind of like what's happening on the left and right.
Sure.
I guess,
yeah, and it's under just to the right of that, under where it says Acorn.
Oh, okay.
So you're in the JavaScript family of languages, and the parser is TypeScript ESLint parser.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so yeah, so on the left here we have TypeScript or JavaScript, and then on the right we have a representation of what the AST is, right?
Yes, and I'll note you're actually, this is another slight annoyance in the ecosystem. You're parsing it with the TypeScript parser. The TypeScript ESLint parser is different, and it's what parses it specifically for ESLint. This is another confusion that we don't like, but we don't have a better way.
Okay, so this is the TypeScript ESLint parser. Okay, so
yes.
Okay, so we have a representation of, I guess program. That means like the top level of the file. Like a file is just considered a program. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so yeah. I'm just gonna kind of open up stuff, and maybe you can kind of talk through things as we go through here. So I guess the first part here. So we have. I see the kind is let, so I'm assuming it's referring to this let here. So maybe kind of break down like what the types are, like the verbiage in here, just to, or the wording, just to maybe guide people a bit.
Definitely. For those who have used trees before or like understand the concept of trees or graphs, this fits right into that. For those who haven't, totally fine, you don't need it. The concept is that it's actually representable as JSON, but it's a tree, meaning things that have children in them. And the root, the top, the most everything part of it is called the program. And the program and everything inside of it, each of those things are called nodes or AST nodes. So the program is a good example because program or source file has a body with some number of things, an array of things. And each of those things is a node. In this case, we have a variable declaration and a function declaration. Those are the two nodes, which you can see in the source file. We have a let tips equals variable declaration, which is indicated by the type property, type variable declaration, and then the function declaration. And each of these has children. Like you're seeing now, the variable has a list of declarations, size 1, with a variable declarator inside it, and so on and so forth. Okay.
Yeah, I find this is like pretty, well, I don't want to say pretty easy, but like the tree representation, it makes, I find it easy to grok what I'm seeing on the left based on this, like even if I've never built anything with an AST. So it makes sense. It's just basically, and I can see here too, there's a JSON representation. So, I think if you're familiar with, like you said, even if you're not familiar with trees, like people are familiar with JSON typically. So it's really like just properties on things and more properties and so on, and other objects, sub-objects, and so on. So, okay, so this makes a lot of sense to me. So like, for example, we're not coding anything yet, but like say I'm looking at this and I want to convert the let to const, because some people prefer const for the majority of things when it's possible. I'm one of those that fall into that camp. I'm not going to die on that hill, but I just prefer it. It makes sense to me, and I understand the confusion people have with const, but this is like a perfect example of where, and I know there's a rule for this, but we could say, okay, let's transform the code on the left. Let's put all the lets to const. And we could do that by looking at this AST. And I guess like the pseudocode would be something like, okay, let's find a variable declaration with a kind equals let. And if we find that and it's not being changed elsewhere in the code, that I'm not sure how to check, honestly. But like if assuming we know that it's only going to be, it's only set where it's set and that's it, we can safely say, okay, let's change this variable declaration to kind equals const, and then at some point spit out the brand new code. I imagine there's a kind of a reverse way to say take the AST and dump it back into a file, or overwrite a file. So that's kind of the flow, I guess. And is it a lot of like ifs and switches basically when you're going through these things, or?
Yeah. It's what you're referring to is often, but not always, called an AST transform. You're taking one AST and transforming it into another AST. Once in a while also called a mapping from one AST to another. Fun fact, ESLint can handle a lot of that for you. So you can use an ESLint rule as a way to suggest fixes or have fixes applied, such as let to const. And ESLint rule is actually, fun fact, the API is text-based. It's APIs like fixer.replace range or inserts text stats type stuff.
Okay.
They're talking about changing that in some long years from now version of ESLint, because it's kind of weird that we work in ASTs and then suggest text fixes. But in ESLint, you would write a rule, which we can show later, where you would find all variable declarations kind equals let. And then for each of those, suggest replacing those 3 characters let at that range with const.
Okay, yeah. And you brought up a good point about it doesn't have to be a one pass on the AST. Like we can stay in AST land for as long as we want, and then at some point we decide to write it to a file. So again, like you're saying, like multiple transforms could happen, or basically do whatever you want with the AST until you're done, and then dump it to wherever you want. And I guess you don't always have to write it to the file right away too, because like I know I've seen with Prettier, at least, it's kind of like you have to, if you're using Prettier from the command line, if you want to actually fix it or apply the changes that Prettier suggested, you have to do --write. I think by default it just console logs it, or it does it to the standard output, I think.
You're absolutely correct. Yeah. Which has really annoyed me at times, or at least when I got started, because I could never remember it. And then I get this giant spew of text in my console. Yeah.
Yeah, and it flies too by. I have this problem too sometimes where not from Prettier necessarily, but you scroll up in your terminal, and then at some point it's just like you can't see anymore, like the buffer got full, I guess, or something. So it's like Anyways. Oh, got a new first time chatter here. Okay, so we've kind of gone through, I think, all the pieces. So I think what would be kind of cool to do is, I know, well, you've been giving a bunch of talks on this stuff for sure, but you just before the stream you shared with me there's a project here. I'm gonna share this in the chat actually, just if folks want to check it out. And this was, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but you said this is 2 TypeScript ESLint rules. That's hard to say.
It's just ESLint rules in there.
Okay.
It really is, and we've been talking about it, and we can't find a better name because TSLint is taken, and we already called it one thing. But yeah, this is source code for. I have a family of talks that revolve around static analysis in JavaScript or TypeScript, and the ESLint local rules folder from the root is a pair of 2 ESLint rules that are about as straightforward, as few features as I could get them. One is for saying, instead of using double equals, use triple equals, and another is replacing he or she with they, because I don't know if any of you are familiar with the stand-up of James Acaster, but it is quite annoying saying he or she instead of they.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, cool. So yeah, I thought we could look at one of the rules here. So I guess it's is it a .js file or what is it?
Look up EQ, should show up there.
Okay.
No equal, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I think this would be a good first pass where we can go through an actual rule, and I think we'll have time, but I think it'd be fun to build out an a TypeScript ESLint rule, even if it's a silly one. I think just going through the exercise will be a lot of fun because, like we were talking about this briefly before the stream, but I've sometimes people get intimidated by these things, and ESLint or TypeScript ESLint is an abstract syntax trees are much more approachable than you think. Is what you were saying. So I think that'd be great if we go through an exercise after we check this out here. So, okay, so we're looking at this particular file here. This is the no equal, what's it called again? No equal equal. So I guess first, what is this rule again? So let's go through that.
Sure. For those who haven't done too much JavaScript, there are two equality operators, equals equals and equals 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 in JavaScript, sometimes called threequals. I saw that on Twitter and Mastodon recently. So double equals is almost always not what you want. Triple equals is almost always what you want. So this rule says, if I ever see you use double equals, I'm going to yell at you.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, cool. So, okay, so let's kind of look at the format here going on. So the first thing is it's a common JS module, so it's using module.exports. Is that because can you not write ECMAScript modules with when you create lint rules right now, or is that just this particular example that's using common JS?
I believe you can. I think it's just this example that was easier to get it set up quickly.
Okay, cool. Okay, so we're from what I can see here, so we're exporting an object and it has two properties, meta and create. So I guess kind of I know it's a small example, but maybe if you could just break down kind of what's happening in here.
Sure. You are correct. There are two general pieces of information with any lint rule written for ESLint. The first piece of information here is meta or metadata. And in this case, there's really only one piece of metadata we care about. We're saying that this lint rule might spit out one of these possible complaints or messages. By the way, people oftentimes say that lint rules throw an error or report an error. It's kind of hard nomenclature because it's not actually erroring. The program isn't exiting with status code 1 or greater. It's giving you a report is the technical terminology. I call it complaining. Gotcha. And here we have one complaint with under the ID equals equals, which is actually the string, oh no, an equal sign.
Okay, gotcha.
So that's the first piece, metadata. The second piece is under create, which takes in this context object, which is where we receive ESLint APIs, like reporting. And we return from this create function an object. And this object is, I think, really cute, really cool. It is a key value mapping of ESQuery queries, which is like the CSS syntax for querying your AST, and then logic to run whenever we see a node that matches that query. And it really is almost exactly like CSS. Here we see any binary expression that has the attribute operator equal to equal equal. It's just like CSS.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, no, that I don't know if that necessarily makes it more approachable, but I totally get, I get it right away. So basically attributes of some piece of AST. Okay. And then, so we're saying return that binary expression, and then the node. Okay, so is that first part, is it a function being returned then, or is it just a full on? Okay, yeah. Okay,
it's a method on the object. It's like a cute little shorthand syntax to make a string key and then a function value.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so basically anytime we find that there's a equals equals, we're going to, I guess, context.report typically would be to your terminal, but it could also be in, like, for example, if you're using Visual Studio Code, it could output it to the to the editor somewhere. That's kind of out of the scope of the rule. Okay, that makes sense. And then we're saying, okay, here's the message ID and the node, and we get that particular message. Okay, so already this doesn't seem that intimidating, honestly. Like, I'm sure there's complex rules, that can get a little hairier for sure. But okay, this is cool. Okay, so if if we wanted to go ahead and create our own rule now, I guess, how do we get bootstrapped? Like, if, you know, just to be able to test the rule, and like, I guess publishing the rule is another thing. Just folks can check out like NPM publishing. But yeah, I guess how would you get set up with some kind of test harness to test your rule that you did? Like, I imagine we got to include TypeScript ESLint and or ESLint to actually run the thing.
Yeah. So ESLint itself comes with a nice class that you can import, the rule tester class, which allows you to set up a bunch of test cases. There are two types of test cases: a valid test case, testing that the rule does not report on some string code, and an invalid test case, testing that it does report on some code.
Okay.
This is like the standard way of testing ESLint rules. TypeScript ESLint has its own rule tester that wraps ESLint that sets up some TypeScript specific stuff as a shorthand. You don't have to use it, but it's nice. I don't have it checked into this project, but if you clone this project, you could, in theory, write a file that sets up rule tester from ESLint. If you want, I can copy and paste the docs into the chat in a moment.
Sure. Okay, I'll while
I
you're
love
doing
your
that, I'm
Twitch
gonna.
name, by the way.
What's that? Oh, my Twitch.
Mickey T online.
Yeah. It's a terrible name, honestly, because like, if I'm on the internet, I'm clearly online. I don't know why I came up with that name. Like, but the first part, it makes sense because when I used to play rugby, people call you by your last name. Like, they'll say, "Hey, Taylor, you know, pass me the ball," or whatever. But at one point, people just started calling me Nicky T. And then when I don't know, someday when I was creating a email or a handle at some point, I was like, Nicky T online. I don't know, maybe I had too many beers when I created it or something. And I just basically stuck with it, even if it's good or bad. So consistency.
I like it. I think it's great.
Okay, cool. So I got this link here. Thanks for sharing that in the chat. And I'll just open that up real quickly. Okay, so this is the rule tester. So this is definitely super helpful. So we would just create a file like this, and then I would be able to import my rule and run it, basically.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay,
it does all the magic of creating the rule, parsing into an AST, whatever for you.
Okay.
I'm
going to go ahead and okay, cool. I'm going to go ahead and fork your project real quick, just to save us some time, I think. No, I don't want to create that under Netlify because I might get in trouble. Okay.
Big ego boost to me that Netlify is forking my project.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you want an ego boost, I'll go fork it over there. Okay, cool. I don't know. I guess I'll be lazy and I can open it up in code spaces. Sure. All right. So we'll give that a second while that's loading up. So, okay. Yeah. So like you were saying, okay, that's pretty much almost ready. Yeah, where was it? Okay, yeah. So yeah, like you were saying, so there's this rule tester class, and if we just look at this really quickly, so we run the rule, whatever that particular rule is, and then okay, I see. So we have a valid code snippet, which is an object with what we would expect, and then if it's invalid, and that's what the rule tester runs against. Okay, I think that sounds pretty straightforward, I think. Okay, let me zoom this in a bit. Okay, so I can't remember if code spaces will install all my dependencies, but oh, whoops, that's my alias. And I have all these weird shortcuts. Yarn, I'm so lazy. Yarn is just Y. It's like,
oh, I love it.
Okay, cool. So this is just installing the dependencies, and I guess if we look for EQ, okay, so the rules are in here. So I would want to create a new rule in here. So
oh, wait, no, sorry. That's just an example file that shows what happens when the rule runs. You want the no equal EQ file.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Which is under ESLint local rules.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
There you go.
Okay, so let's create one here. I'll keep it as common.js just to keep it simple in case for some reason it's not supporting the other one. So I thought we could do, you know, not something silly, but something fun that might not be super useful, but like optional chaining is something that's somewhat new. I think it's a couple years old, maybe 3 years. I can't remember. But yeah, I thought we could maybe have a rule. So like, say I have an object and I want to access, object dot property dot subproperty, you know, if we could actually just say make all those optional chaining, so I don't have to worry about it exploding. Not necessarily super useful, but do you think that's something we could maybe build out? Or
Yeah, we
what do you
could.
recommend?
It is doable, and in fact, we actually have that as a rule in TypeScript ESLint.
Oh, okay.
For optional chaining, I believe is the name. However, I will note it can get a little tricky querying the AST because you want to check for anything where it's a thing and thing.thing.
Okay.
But then you also want to check if the two strings are the same, and what if they're not actually strings, where it's like foo parentheses and foo parentheses dot. I would actually suggest we could do the rule you were talking about earlier about let to const, because that's a
Oh,
little
yeah, yeah.
simpler, and
Okay.
then also gives us the opportunity to use the auto fixer.
Okay, yeah, cool. Yeah, no, that's a great idea. Okay, so I'm just gonna copy this and then we'll rename it. Let's just call it let to const. And I'll say, oh no, a const. So, and again, this is just the error message. Is that right?
Yes, that's yeah. Did you mean oh no a let?
Oh yeah. Oh no, a let. Yeah, sorry.
Oh hey
Already I'm
there,
screwing
syntax
up.
highlighting just kicked in.
Oh yeah, that's if folks have never used GitHub Codespaces, I did a stream with Rizal. Unfortunately, I forgot to pull down the recording, so I only have a highlight. But this is actually importing all my settings from Visual Studio Code. If you use the settings sync, not the extension, but the built-in stuff. And so this has my theme and stuff. I'm using Sarah Drasner's Fortnite. um, but yeah, it looks like it might have my GitHub CoPilot running too and stuff. Okay, so oh no, a let, and there's just a message in the chat. Rudix World saying, "Hey, I have a suggestion. There is no lint rule about empty spaces between class names. In production, you can end with something like comma class. Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. Um, I don't know if we'll have time to do that, but we could probably talk about it. And if we have time, maybe we can try something like that. But why don't we work on the let versus const one first, and maybe we can. I think we could maybe definitely talk about the one about the class name, and then maybe how we could approach it, and that could actually be something that maybe we could get the audience to try on their own if they fork your project and try and do it. Sorry, throwing that back at you, Rodix World. But I think it would be fun to do. And I'm going to try it myself too. Okay.
Yeah. As a side note, I'll say that there are a couple of ESLint plugins, one for React, one for specifically the class names helper that's really popular. Not for the stream,
Okay.
but just in general. Would recommend for folks if you have rule ideas like this one, like Rudix World, that's a great. You can always file it as an issue on GitHub for whatever plugin is most relevant, or if it's for all JavaScript on ESLint itself or TypeScript ESLint. I think it's a great
Okay.
idea.
Yeah, no, for sure. Okay. Whoops. Yeah. So no let. Why is that not copying? Okay. So the first things I'm seeing here. So we have in our meta the message. So we're saying oh no a let. I'm just changing the message ID to no let or node, and then I'm just replacing it here.
Yep.
So okay. So we're set up for giving the actual error message or warning. That's actually something we can talk about too. How do you configure it to be a warning versus an error? Maybe we can get to that. We'll see. Okay, so we have the start of the rule here. So is this just really looking at? Is it the variable declarator kind? Is that what it was? I can't remember.
I don't remember either. We should look at the AST. Yeah.
Okay. Oh, variable
Okay.
declaration. Okay. So,
Yes.
okay,
Because
and
fun fact, you
then
can
the
have
kind.
multiple variables declared in a declaration. You can like var a comma b comma c.
Okay. So would this just look like this var declarator um let sorry, kind equals let, like,
I
is that
believe
pretty much
so.
it?
I think it's variable declaration. So this
Oh
is one
yeah,
of the
you're right.
things with ASTs that gets tricky, that like there are different names that are similar. A variable declaration contains likely at least one variable declarator. So yeah, here we go. That looks good to me.
Okay. And then so right here, this at a minimum, what this will do is just output a message that's either a warning or an error, depending on how ESLint is configured, right? Or TypeScript ESLint.
Yep.
Okay.
So TypeScript ESLint is just like a set of like rules and a parser for ESLint. It's always ESLint being run. And for ESLint, rules don't know what severity they are generally. You configure that in your ESLint config file, which is often ESLint RC.
Okay, so it's completely separate from the rule. Okay, so okay, gotcha. Okay, so we have this here now. Now, say I wanted to actually fix it. Like this is giving the warning or the potential error, depending, like you said, how ESLint is configured. How would you actually change it?
Great question. There is another property you can add to the argument passed to report called fix. Fix is a function that takes in a fixer. So one argument fixer. And the function can then call methods on fix. So its fix is the name of the function, and then it takes in oh yeah, like GitHub CoPilot is saying. So, oh my God, that's so close. It's not there, but that's really impressive. You don't want to replace the entire node with const, but I'm so impressed with GitHub CoPilot for getting it almost right.
Okay, yes. Yeah, we just want to change the kind, right? So
yeah. So what is it? It's like fixer dot replace text range. I forget. There's a set of APIs. You could look at the ESLint docs if you want, but it's like replace text range or something.
Okay, let's take a quick peek here. ESLint replace text range. Working with ESLint rules, text range. Or let's just look for range.
Yeah.
Oh, replace text range.
There we go.
Okay. Okay, replaces the text in the given range. Okay. So I guess in terms of calculating the range, so we have the node here. What was it saying in the rule? Sorry, it was saying there's the range and the text. So range is a 2-item array. Okay, let's see here. Should get fixed either. I'm just trying to see how you do this. So let me zoom that in. Sorry for folks. Okay. I was hoping it would go to a link to replace text range, but it's the range is, I guess, just like the numeric values for like that piece of text.
Yeah, and actually the paragraph right after your text selection is the right info. A range is a 2-item array, so tuple size 2, containing 2 numbers, character indices inside the source code. So you could pass as the range an array containing node.range 0, node.range 0 plus 3.
Okay.
I don't know if that spew that I just said is actually logical words, but yes.
Okay.
And so it starts at the same range as the node. It's an array, not a function.
Oh, sorry.
But yeah, you're otherwise right. So node.range 0. So it starts in the same place as the node, but instead of ending at this node.range 1, it's node.range 0, comma, node.range 0 plus 3. I wish I could. I'm going to put in the chat. What am I doing?
Oh, I should have invited you with live share. Actually, I didn't even think of that.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah. Okay. So node.range. Here, I'll let you drop it in the chat. Sorry.
I've got like 3 different versions of Twitch running locally.
Cool. Yeah, I think my brain sizzled. That's all. It's end of year brain kicked in.
Oh yeah.
Did you drop it in? Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Oh, okay. I see what you mean. Yeah. I did not understand that when you were talking. So. Okay. There. Okay. So basically start off at 0 and then it's not 2 because it's adding 3 in terms of the length, right? 0 is the starting position and 3 characters for let. That's why we're doing that.
Yeah, and actually, now that I'm looking at this and remembering, what we sometimes do in the ESLint world is we'll look at the string we're trying to replace, and instead of hard coding it, just do whatever the string literal is .length. So this code is
Okay.
perfect and fine as is. And another way of doing it would be instead of the 3, put quote let quote .length, which I put in the Twitch chat. That's another way of doing the same thing that some would argue is more documented at the cost of having more code.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay, that oh, I see what you mean. Okay, you're literally just the literal string let. Okay, just I got you. Cool. All right. Okay, so this in theory should replace the let with the const now. So now we want to actually test it. And I imagine since you have your project set up already, you have the ESLint tester somewhere that was in the linting. Or
that would have been a great idea, great thing for me to do. I do not, I'm sorry, but
I know it's okay.
You could set it up now, or you could go to the ESLint rc.cjs file in the root and enable this this rule, so then you could see in your editor.
Oh, gotcha.
Cool.
All right, so I literally call it the name of the file, I guess.
Oh shoot, I'm sorry, I said the wrong one. Go to, there's a file with a name, ESLint local rules.cjs. There's like a weird hacky-ish kind of plugin you have to use to enable local rules.
Okay.
There you go. So add it to this list here.
Okay, so let to const, which is the actual file, and then okay, and then and it's doing the require here, but I'll just move it up top there just to keep it consistent. Const let to const equals, but I am impressed how CoPilot's like, yeah, you just need to do that.
I give it like an A or A- for today, honestly.
Yeah, it varies, and I do use it in my day-to-day. I do find it, I forget to turn it off sometimes midway through a stream, because if I'm trying to teach something sometimes, it's like, I'm like, and then we will start looking at this, and all of a sudden GitHub Copilot's, here's the whole answer. And I'm like, no, wait. Yeah. So anyways, little side note. Okay, so we've added the rule here to the local lint rules. So now I can literally go into any code in here, I guess, and try it out. Or where should I
really hope so. Anywhere should be fine. I really hope that's how it works. You never know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Well, let me
trying to locally nervously.
Let yo equals potato. Okay, so let's take a peek here. Okay, yeah, it's never used. Sure. Let me console.log yo. Okay, so now we still. Nice.
You know what? I think you do have to modify. That is, you're running. You're actually getting hit by. This is already a rule.
Const.
Yeah, I'm sorry. There is something you have to modify in ESLint.rc.cjs.
Okay.
Sorry, there's one more thing. Wait I'm so confused.
I'm gonna turn prefer const off.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, and what was the other thing you said?
That might be it, actually.
Okay.
Oof, so I should have prepared better for this. I didn't expect it to not work immediately.
Oh, no. It's all good. Okay,
I am seeing a different ESLint.rc.cjs in my clone of the repo. Are we something weird?
Are you in the main branch? Because I'm in the main.
Yeah.
Okay, weird. Where is it? Index. Okay, so let's see here. Use const. Oh no, it's still using prefer const.
We can do is like set yo equals something or other. Oh yeah, it saves when you save the file. It auto fixes when you save the file, which is normally a great feature and really annoying when you're trying to demo ESLint rules.
Yeah. I did disable it, so I mean it is right. It's just off, right? Yeah, prefer const off. Why is it not picking that up?
I'm so confused. Are there multiple ESLint RC files?
Let me take a peek. ESLint There's these here. There's the ignore, the ESLint RC, then the local rules.
I'm sorry, I'm very confused right now. On my local computer and in the code spaces shenanigan that I've got up, it's
It's all good. Let me make sure this is right here.
different from what you see.
Yeah.
Because in
no,
my
let's see.
ESLint RC, you have to explicitly enable local rules / whatever we called the thing, let to const.
Weird. ESLint local rules, package lock, yarn. Okay, let's
Try
do
what
that.
are the changes for ESLint RC?
Yeah, so we got just my prefer const off. Prefer.
Wait a second. Could you scroll up in that file in ESLint RC?
Yeah.
Oh my God! The screen was blurry. Okay, line 12. Copy that line to make it also local rules / let to const. Oy vey.
Oh, okay.
There it is.
Local rules let to const error. Okay.
Nicely done, CoPilot. Look at you. Look at you.
Look at us. All right. Okay. Why is it still weird? Why is it? Is this folder maybe exists?
You know what? Try restarting the ESLint server. It's like one of the, I don't know if you're on Mac or Windows, but like one of the VS Code commands you can run. For me, it's Command Shift P. I think it's Control Shift P. Yeah, restart ESLint server.
Restarted it there. Okay. So let's see here. Let yo.
Come on, ESLint.
Here, let's do this. Okay, yo. And now everything's fine.
Wait, did you undo the change in the local rules file?
I don't think I did. Also, to be clear to folks who are in the chat, if you just happen to be joining, there's nothing wrong with the rule we wrote. We're just bootstrapping to try to test this. Or maybe there is something wrong with the rule. I don't think there is, but okay, so we've got local rules let to const should give an error. And then I have the prefer const turned off. Let's see here. My thing's set to auto save, so it should have taken that. Yeah, only 29 million or so downloads, eh? No biggie. Okay, that's weird. Yeah, let me try and restart the ESLint again. If not, I'm just gonna go bring this into.
Maybe there is something wrong with the rule. Maybe it's maybe the query is wrong. Tell you what, just to test it, what you can do is you can replace the query with asterisk. Much like CSS, it'll apply to everything, which will give you an amazing number of red squigglies in VS Code.
Okay, yeah, because your rule's working, so it's definitely, the rules are definitely set up properly. So yeah, okay, so let's go back to my rule, or our rule, I should say. Okay, you were saying use star here.
Oh yeah, you know what? Try just removing the kind equals thing with the array brackets. Maybe just make a complaint on all variable declarations. I'm wondering if it needs to be double quotes around let, which would be really annoying.
Okay. Yeah, gotcha. Okay, so let's go take.
I think you have to restart ESLint after this.
Okay. There we go, and then let's do undo. Come on, ESLint. Okay, so it could be just there's something wrong with my particular rule, like you said, which makes sense because. So let's just hold on a sec here. Let's close these other files. And let's just look at the rule, I guess. Go to the side. Thank you. Okay. Yeah, and let's boost that up. Okay. Let's close this.
It's like I feel like I'm in a race here with you and the chat. Just who is going to figure out what's going on first? I'm so excited right now. Maybe it's all that chocolate I ate. The sugar is coursing through my veins.
It's like, well, welcome back to live coding, too fast, too furious.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so if we don't put the fixer, will it report the message?
It should, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
I say
let's just
comment
see if
that
it at
out.
least reports it to start off. And like you said, I'll need to restart the ESLint server probably. Okay, so we're
Yeah.
saying context, variable. Okay, there we go. Oh no, a let. Okay, so it's the fixer that's the issue. Okay. And actually, since that worked, let's try and put back the.
Oh wait. Oh my God. Line 16. I think I see it.
Okay. Okay. Well, let's leave the kind out for now. Well, okay. So let's come here. Whoops. Okay. Line 16. You're saying. Oh, it's because I'm doing
I think you
replace
added.
text range. Replace text range.
What a great debugging experience. No errors shown. Ugh, that hurt. This hurt
Okay.
me. My soul.
Okay.
But
So.
great.
Okay. So this should be okay, I think. Okay. So let's do ESLint. Restart. Okay. All right. We did it, Joe. Maybe. We'll see. Okay. Did I
Or
did
maybe not.
restart.
Gosh darn it.
Let potato. Okay, wait. Return fixer, replace text range, node range 0 to node range 0 plus 3, and replace it to const. That looks okay. I'm going to restart one more
There is
time.
a VS Code. Yeah, that's a good idea. There also is another VS Code command, ESLint show output channel. So it might be that it's showing complaints there.
Yeah. All right. Let's see here.
Oh, I forgot about that. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. We've got to add this up here. And then is it to code or okay?
Oof.
All right. Well, thank you for logs.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that's good to know though. Okay, so all right. Oh no, and I've got my fancy. I don't know if other folks have this one. I forget what this extension's called, but it shows the errors there. I think it's called Error
nice.
Lens. It's a nice extension for folks. Okay, so we've got it. Nice. Oh no, a let. Okay, and if I save it, it should convert it to const. Okay, I understand what happened here. It replaced let with const, but I'm not sure why I added st after. Like,
it replaced let with const, and then replaced the first three letters of the const with const because we removed the variable declaration kind equals let from the query.
Oh, okay. All right, so let's come back up here.
Nice.
No, that's good. This is a great learning experience, honestly. Like, cause I want to build a rule now. Now that I'm understanding what's going on here. So
awesome.
Kind equals let. Okay, what's it not like in there?
You have to wrap the whole sucker with a string.
Oh, okay. Let's just do this.
Which probably helps explain the syntax now that you're like starting from the beginning and seeing how it. And you have to use a single quote, unfortunately.
Yeah, I was trying to use the template string quotes, but
I wish you could. I don't know why you can't. That seems like it would be really useful. Probably some reason.
Okay, so let's do let. Give it a second to kick in. Boom. Okay. Oh no, a let. And now let's save it. Woohoo!
Amazing.
Yeah, awesome. No, this is really cool. I know this is like not necessarily a mind-blowing example, but it makes me think that I think a fun exercise to learn these things would be like, go look at an existing rule, like not the source code, but like, what does this rule do? You know, can I actually recreate it? You know, I think it'd be, I mean, if you like doing those kinds of things, like I would find it interesting. Like, how could I build this? You know, and it'd be fun to compare like, how did I implement it versus them? I imagine a lot of it will have to be the same because, you know, like for example, you know, you have to have this thing has to be probably exactly the same thing as whoever created the rule. But no, this is super cool. Okay. So let's just walk through it again. Cause I know, I saw somebody joined recently. So we basically have our ESLint rule. We just have to export an object, whether it's common.js, which is what this example is, or if you were using ECMAScript. Either way, you just need to export an object. If it's ESM, it's a default export, I guess. And then, so we have two properties on this object. One's the meta, and that includes the messages. So like basically, like what you want to output when it doesn't go right, or they've violated this rule. So in my case, I'm saying, oh no, a let, because they typed in let. And then we have this key here, and that key maps to the message ID when you report to the context. And the context, like we saw, if we come back here for a second. So the context here is when you hover it over, VS Code is using that context to report it in Visual Studio Code itself. And also that extension I have, Error Lens, is actually using the context report as well to output it here. Again, the context can literally be anything. A lot of times it's either your editor or I guess the standard output. And then we have, in our case here, because we have the rule we've created, we want it to be a fixable rule, because not all rules are fixable, but if you can make it auto fixable, I imagine it's encouraged to do that, just to save people time. So we have this other property on the meta called fixable, and we're putting the value code. Is there other, what are the other options to have here for fixable? Would it be like comment, or would it be something else, or?
White space. And the reason why is some ESLint rules intentionally are just for formatting. And everyone hates those rules who works on these tools. No one actually likes it when no one who works on these tools likes it when people use ESLint as a formatter. So they've shoved the fixable white space rules off into a little corner, so we know not to worry about them too much.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so it can be code or white space, like you said. And then we have another property which is called create, which is a function, and it takes a context. And like I was saying, the context could be your editor, it could be an extension, it could be standard output. It's whatever's running this rule is what decides that, I guess. And in there, we need to always return an object. And in that object, we're always returning a function. This is like object shorthand for a function. It does look a little weird by having the string here, but I get it now after you said it, because I was a little confused at first, because I'm used to seeing it where it's a actual name there, not text. So we're basically,
you don't have to use the shorthand, by the way. You could do like string colon space function, or string colon space or lambda.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I'm a fan. Well, personally, I'm a fan of the short object notation. It's just I got a little confused when I saw it this way. But yeah, like you said, you could do it with an arrow function or even a function. And then that takes the node. So the node is the current piece of code that's coming from the AST, correct? Okay.
Yep.
And that node is based on what you declare here in terms of the name. So we're saying, go get me the node that is a variable declaration, or sorry, go get me all the nodes, because this will run on every node, right? That matches that?
Yes.
Okay,
any node anywhere in any file that's getting linted, that matches that query. Yep.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, cool. And again, just a shout out to CSS selectors. So whether that's intentional or not, that made it pretty familiar to myself once you mentioned that. And then in there, so we have a context, and that has a report function, or method, sorry. And in there, we pass in an object with a few things. So we've got the message ID, which is no let in this case, and that's related to the message that gets outputted from the context over here, like you see. Okay, that makes sense. And then we have the node itself, because that's what we want to potentially manipulate. And then if we do want to actually, so like if we didn't have the fix, like you said here, what we could do is we would just be reporting whether it's a warning or an error. Again, that depends on how you configure your ESLint, but we don't need the fix. But if we do want to be able to fix it automatically, if it makes sense, we add a fix property, a fix function, or on the, sorry, a fixed method on this object here. And that takes a fixer, and the fixer, I guess, is the node that's about to be manipulated.
The fixer is it's an object that gives you methods that apply to the source file. It's actually independent of the node itself. Like you might have a fixer that says, like, if I see a node like this, add a comment to the top of the file or something like that.
Okay, yeah, sorry, that makes sense, because in there we're saying replace a text range now, and we're passing a tuple here, and we're actually saying modify the node itself, so it knows to mutate this node here. And so in our case, let is 3 characters, so we're saying start off at 0, which is the start of the variable declaration, up until 3 characters, which is the word let itself. And then the second argument is literally replace it with const, which is what we do, because if we come over here and we click save, boom. Okay. Yep. No, I
not so bad, right? That's pretty cool.
No, it really isn't that bad. You know, like I think this is pretty approachable, you know, like, and it looks like there's some really good documentation. And if we go back to the ESLint rules, where was it? I'm on the wrong screen. Okay, I don't know, where am I doing here? Oh, I must have closed the browser. Hold on a sec.
Oh no.
Cool. What is it? ESLint. I'll find the link to the rules there. But anyways, the documentation about the ESLint rules, where I found the replace text range, like it was text range. ESLint. Okay, working with, I'll drop a link to this.
Which is a great page, by the way. This working with rules page, I have gone back to so many times since starting to work on Lint stuff. Props to the ESLint team.
I'm gonna bookmark this one up here. Let's keep this up here. Okay, cool. Yeah, no, so there's a lot of great documentation. And like you said, there's, I think one thing you were talking about in regards to TypeScript ESLint, I saw, I can't remember if it was a tweet or a toot, depending on if you're on Mastodon or not. But you're saying, I think you were working to get the amount of issues in the TypeScript ESLint repository down. I think you got them to like 250, or that was a goal.
Ooh, yeah, that's a goal.
Okay.
Right now we are floating between 300 to 350 issues. It's been like that for a little while.
Okay.
Almost a tenth of them, something like 8% of them are from me, because I've just been complaining and asking for things a lot. But yeah, my goal for the end of the year is to get our open issues down to 250 and our open PRs down to, I think it's like 15 or something. And the issue count is a little higher than normal because I've been working really hard lately on the documentation. That's like the current thrust for me. So gotcha. got a lot of work to do there that I'm really excited about.
Cool. I'm just dropping a link in the chat for folks. I dropped good first issues. I mean, obviously take something else if you want to, but I'm going to take a peek in there too. Is there, I guess, like, maybe it's too hard to answer, but like, what are the majority of the issues in the repository right now? Like, what are, is it documentation? Is it failing tests? Or is it just rules need to be cleaned up? Or is it all that? Or...
It's a great question. I think the most common, there are like 3 kind of most common ones. The most common is probably adding features to existing rules, because crashes, bugs get fixed really quickly. People really hate when the linter is wrong and yet failing their build incorrectly. Yeah, gotcha. So those come up and then they're fixed relatively quickly on average. But like features, they're always floating around. We'd like the rule to do this in some edge case. So definitely those.
Okay.
Also, gotcha. Docs are really big too. If there's anything you want, like I would even say a best first contribution to TypeScript ESLint might, for a lot of people, be ask us for documentation on something. Like this, we don't document everything yet. But then also we have a website, TypeScriptESLint.io. There's a dash in between those 2 words. And it's a React website. We work on it. You don't even need to know any of the things we covered in the stream to work on the site. It's a Docusaurus site, which is a fantastic static site generator for doc sites. Fun fact, learningtypescript.com uses it. And like, if you just know React, you can contribute to this website. Okay.
And since you mentioned learningtypescript.com, I'm gonna give, it's not a shameless plug because I'm giving it, but we talked about Josh's book last time. Like I said, it's a really great book. If you're starting out, I definitely encourage you to get this book. The other thing I'd say too is a lot of people forget about this, but a lot of companies have educational stipends. You use that for stuff like this. Like I used it to buy this book, and even though I've been doing TypeScript for a long time, like I was saying at the start of the stream, I knew I would learn something because Josh has like a teaching background. He used to work at I'm butchering the name, but is it Code Academy or Coda?
You got it right the first time. There's no
Okay,
A in the
Code
middle,
Academy.
which actually was the
Okay,
Wi-Fi password for a while in the office. Where's the A?
okay. So if you need Wi-Fi in New York, go look for the Code Academy its office. But yeah, no, it's a great book because I personally, it's my own opinion, but I think you really explain the concepts well, and you touch on stuff that I haven't seen in other TypeScript books, like what are types, like what, like kind of digging into like really some fundamental things before you start talking about TypeScript. And then, the material doesn't get more difficult, but it as you move along, like it just kind of ramps up and stuff. And I remember you talking about, we were talking about generics. And from what I remember, you'd said, generics aren't necessarily hard to grasp. They're just typically taught poorly. And I think you were even saying that when you wrote the chapter or a couple chapters for this, you had to rewrite it a few times just to get it like into a state that you thought was really good. So kudos to that. So
yeah, thank you. Generics are much harder to teach than they are to, when taught well, understand, I think. But then again, every concept is harder or easier for different people. Like I personally found, if I remember right, generics to be incredibly difficult to understand at first. Also functions. I remember in high school when I was learning Java, I just did not understand functions for the longest time. So, your mileage may vary. But thank you. I appreciate the plug.
Yeah, I do know what you mean, because like I remember when I started Java, like I didn't understand the static void main. Like I couldn't grasp like how does the like, I mean, this happens in C# too. There's a main to start, but for some reason when I was starting off, I couldn't grasp that the code just knows to start in here. Like I was always like wondering like what gets you to there, like it's not magic obviously, but it was stuff like that I just couldn't grasp, and so it caused a lot of confusion for me initially, and then after that I think part of it was like I know that the program just knows to go look there, and I just kind of like I honestly didn't worry about it after that. But anyways, but yeah. Yeah, I know you got to head out at 2:00. We got about 15 minutes here left. With I was wondering, we've covered a lot about abstract syntax trees. I'm gonna drop the AST Explorer again there. Super helpful site. We've talked about ESLint and TypeScript ESLint, and I love that I'm really happy we went through the exercise of building out an ESLint rule. It's again, like I was saying, that was kind of like selfish of me because I wanted to be able to do one too. So, but I love that it's actually pretty approachable. And aside from all that, like maybe we could just spend a few minutes again talking about TypeScript. You'd mentioned generics are definitely a tough thing, and I just kind of wanted to maybe touch on that again. Like we talked about it previously, but like what is it do you think that people have a hard time grasping? Like I have some ideas of why folks kind of struggle with it in some sense. I know both of us, we did C# before, so I think the transition into TypeScript was probably not a big deal. But yeah, I don't know if you wanted to speak to that again for folks that might have not caught the last stream.
Sure. I'll also note I can go over time if you want. I intentionally cleared my calendar because last time I had to rush.
Yeah, cool.
Also because I like clearing my calendar and doing fun things like this. Yeah. I think generics are hard because the syntax for them is in a different paradigm. Yeah, 24-hour TypeScript all day. Woo. Live, love, laugh TypeScript. The syntax for them is in a different paradigm than the surrounding language. So you have to learn a new way of thinking. TypeScript code, JavaScript code, Python, Ruby, all these, they're imperative code. They're, let a variable equals some value. Like it's a very, this is how things are. These are the instructions you're taking. But then the TypeScript type system is, in addition to this bolt-on on top of your runtime code, it's this development time language, which isn't actually like a functional or object-oriented or in any way imperative. It's this logical programming language. Yeah, good.
Yeah.
That. It's actually much less complex than the code you're writing, but it is a different way of thinking. So not only do you have to learn a new way of thinking, you have to then also be able to switch back and forth. And when you've done it for a while, it's not that big of a deal. Like I've been doing generics for a while, so yeah, I'm just, oh yeah, the function's generic, the type's different every time it's called. But when you're first learning it, some people, not everyone, but some people find that really challenging.
Yeah.
That's my personal theory. I don't know how well that matches up against your experience.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Like there's stuff I've noticed where it's like they understand that it's generic, but then they assume because it's generic, like I passed in an array of numbers, that all of a sudden I can actually use number methods or stuff related to numbers within the generic, kind of like if it's the number in my generic, then I can do this. And that's where I've seen people get confused, and it's just kind of reiterating that, it's generic in the sense like you've passed in an array of numbers or array of strings, but you can't do anything that's string related or number related within the actual generic function. You can use what is generic, which is the array methods and stuff. So I think that's where I've seen it trip up people. But I think the other thing too is, I think in userland code, I definitely use generics in userland code, but I think for the most part, a lot of times, like you're consuming libraries and a lot of these things already have types built in. And because TypeScript's pretty good at inference these days, like a lot of times you don't even need to set types for things. Or like, I think if you're like using good libraries or stuff that's imported, most of the time you're not going to necessarily need to type these things because it'll, it's just kind of superfluous to do it, So there's that too, but.
Yeah, I'm writing a blog post, give or take now this month, on what I call the TypeScript type cycle, which is a variation. It's there's a real Wikipedia article for this phenomenon that's debatably in existence called the Gartner hype cycle. That every technology or most tech things go through this, where you have initially this peak of inflated expectations, where everyone's amazed by it. Oh my God, it's the latest greatest thing, React or GraphQL or whatever. It solves all the issues. And then once you really get to know and you overuse it, you enter this trough of disillusionment where you realize, oh my God, I've overused this thing. It's terrible. I can't use it for anything. And then you have this plateau of productivity where you understand where to use it, where not to use it. And I think TypeScript types go through the same thing. Every tech goes through this. People who learn programming struggle with the concept of binary operations. What do you mean I can't say if A less than 3 and less than 10? Like, why doesn't that work? Like every stage of it goes through that same hype cycle. But the TypeScript one in particular is something a lot of people go through in a very similar way to each other. They use generics for everything. Now they hate generics, and then eventually they get used to them.
Yeah. What is it? What's that expression? Death to generics, long live generics, or what I forget what that expression is. But,
generics are I know dead, long live generics. There's something out.
Yeah, exactly. Whatever that cool quote is, that's what I meant. But yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, I know they've had like the state of JS surveys, and just like I know even our Jamstack survey, like at work that Laurie Voss runs, TypeScript's getting more and more popular every year. And I don't know. I think it makes sense. Like I was actually in Codebase today, and for some reason it was a mixture of Dino code and TypeScript, and for some reason the type checking wasn't kicking in for some reason. And it's when I realized like it's great to have TypeScript, even though it wasn't working in this instance. I'd been staring at the same amount of the same code for like a day or so, and then I paired with somebody, and the problem was I was passing two arguments to this function, but the function that accepted it was accepting an object, but it was destructured in the other one. And when I was looking at it, and because TypeScript wasn't saying, hey, this isn't, only allows one parameter or argument. I'm getting into that parameter versus argument again.
Yeah. Do you remember which is which? No one ever does. It took me a while.
I remember now, and no joke, it clicked for me when I was reading your book. So parameter is what a method or a function can accept. Argument is the actual value you're passing in. And I honestly literally mixed those two terms up until I read your book. And that's like, we're talking about a month and a half ago. So already there.
I mixed those two terms up until I wrote the book, which was really annoying when working with lint rules, where for once the difference actually matters. Hello.
Yeah, no, but for sure it matters. And this is super important. Like, you really want to understand these terms, like, cause like a lot of times we use stuff interchangeably, and, it can totally miscommunicate something, Oliver in the chat's like, whoa, I don't know if that means he just understood the difference. But if that's why you're going, whoa, Oliver, like I said, me a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, that was me. I was like, oh, that's what the difference is. So
Oliver, you're either excited about function parameters versus arguments, or you just really like royalty. But either way, I'm with you.
Well, he's in the UK, so he could be a fan of royalty, and not.
I hear that's a hot topic over there.
Yeah. This has nothing to do with TypeScript, but hold on one second.
Oh boy.
I showed this at work, so this is the Queen of England that most people know. I have a ton of original photos of her, and like here's like some examples of, this is a train ride across Canada. My grandfather used to work for Canadian National Railway and Via Rail, which are like the main rail companies here. And the Queen, and I'm forgetting her husband's name. It's not Prince Andrew.
Charles?
No, Charles is the where Canadians are the last holdout of the monarchy. But basically what happened is Philip, thank you. But they would I don't know how many times they've done this, but the Queen would travel across Canada from the east coast of Canada all the way to the west coast. There's like it's super expensive, but if you like riding trains, you can take a train trip literally across Canada, and you end up finishing off going through the Rocky Mountains and stuff. But my grandfather was working on the train, and so like he got to, I don't know if he met her in person, but like there's like a lot of very close photos of the Queen and the Prime Minister at the time, who was the father of the current Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. He was on that train too, and my grandfather was on that train. And it was just funny conversations, because my brother's name is Justin, and the current Prime Minister's name is Justin. So my grandfather and the Prime Minister at the time were just talking about my brother and his son. So it was just kind of funny. Little completely unrelated side note to TypeScript, but there was a monarchy reference, so I just thought I'd bring that up. Anyways.
I also want to point out how much I love trains. Maybe not love. I really like trains. I think it's a really fun way to get like from a place to another place. You get beautiful views, and you can actually work on your laptop nicely. And there's good food.
Yeah. No, I'm a big fan of trains. Yeah, I'm a big fan of trains too. Not a lot of my family worked in the railroads actually on my mom's side, but I would go visit my grandparents. They lived in Mississauga, and was kind of outskirts of Toronto. And I'm actually going to Toronto in a couple of weeks, but I'm taking the train. And I've always loved taking the train. Well, what's going on?
I'm going to Toronto in a couple of weeks, but I'm flying. I'm sorry.
Okay. That's all good. That's all good. Unrelated, but Anthony in the chat, I think, is trying to put a donut on your face.
Oh yeah. I was wondering about this. Am I supposed to eat this? Do I or is it?
I guess you could try and eat it. I don't have a command to make it disappear, but you could try eating it, I guess.
Use like some kind of AI thing to like cut holes.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I'm like you. Like I'm I could be on a train for hours and hours, and even though the landscape might look the same all the time while you're out there, like I don't know what it is. I just find it super relaxing, and I just really find it enjoyable compared to, I mean, I like flying, but flying is not as comfortable as being on the train. And honestly, nowadays I hate driving long distances. If I don't have to, I'm not going to. So yeah.
Yep.
Train's the original self-driving
It's
car.
a great point. All the benefits of a self-driving car are there if you just have a fixed destination that everyone else does.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There you go. Take that, Elon. There's your AI powered but anyways, I don't know how we went on this huge
Yeah.
tangent, but all good. Um yeah, we're getting close to two. I'm probably gonna have to have a hard stop soon because I do have to get back to work. But this has been super awesome, Josh. Honestly, I love chatting with you about all this stuff. You're such a great educator with all these things, and seriously, thanks for all you've been doing in open source. I'm gonna drop a bunch of links for you. Josh, as you mentioned, for folks that joined the stream late, he's gone full time as an open source developer. So there's links where you can follow him, including his GitHub sponsors page if that's something you're inclined to do. I guess before we wrap it up, anything else you want to say, Josh, aside from loving trains or trying to eat the donut or I don't know.
I love LAMP. No, thank you,
Okay.
Nick. I really enjoyed chatting with you. I'm going to try to meet with you in person in Toronto, see if that's doable. But no, I really appreciate
No.
you letting me plug my stuff. And we didn't even go into typed rules, which use the type check, which I think would be
That's
a
right.
cool extra thing. Maybe another time. But yeah,
maybe we'll do that in the new year. Yeah.
be great.
Awesome. And thank you, Baldus Geek, for the follow. I guess that's a cool way to wrap up with a follow. Yeah, thanks again, everybody. Definitely follow Josh in all those places. Check out his book. I highly recommend it. I'll drop that again. And aside from that, we'll see you next week. I'm going to be hanging out with Will Johnson from Auth0. So we're going to be having some fun with Auth0 actions. So definitely check that out next Wednesday. Lots of other great guests coming on. Got Ben from Astro coming on, Ben Holmes, aka Mr. Whiteboard. So we're gonna be doing some stuff there, having some fun with Astro and a few other things. Check out the schedule if you just go to. I'll just drop it in the chat. I am developer.live/schedule. Lots of great guests coming on. So yeah, thanks again, everybody, and we will see you next week.